Hi there, Jerry. I can see that you've just joined us. I'll just say hi to Rosie as well. Great to see you on. We're going to get started in just a minute or two. We'll just wait for a few more attendees to join us. Okay, everyone. Well, thanks so much for joining us at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. I know that it's been a long and possibly tricky week for some people working from home and dealing with other things that are going on in their businesses. So we really appreciate you taking time out to join us for this Getting Paid webinar. I'm going to hand over to Vicky, who's going to be our moderator today. So Vicky, do you want to get started?
Sure, thanks, Tori. Yeah, so I'm Vicky. I'm one of the practice managers at Panthera along with Tori, and I'll be your moderator today. First of all, let's go through some of the tools for webinars, for those of you who are not quite used to them yet. So down on the left-hand corner, there's audio settings to select and test your speakers. And over towards the right is a Q&A button where you can type in your questions, which we'll be answering at the end. Some I might be able to answer during, but most of them we'll leave to the end of the session. And if you need to leave, then there is the button on the right-hand side, and you can come back using the link if you so desire. So now I'm going to pass back to Tori, who's the director of Panthera. Welcome, Tori.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Vicky, and hi to everybody for making time to listen into this really important webinar. We really appreciate that these are difficult times with quite a lot of uncertainty and concern for a lot of people. We want you to know that we're here for you, albeit remotely at the moment, to give you whatever support we can to get you through these tricky times. So just as an opener, we like to talk about what our core purpose is at Panthera, and our core purpose is to help our clients to thrive so that they can achieve their goals. And really what I'd like to emphasize today is that, yes, of course, the first steps are to survive your current situation, but the real goal is to thrive during this and afterwards, so that we come out of this period with a strong and sustainable business. So with this core purpose in mind, we're here to share with you practical things you can do to minimise the downside on your cash flow during this period. Before we kick off, we just want to give you a thought for the day. So we always like to start our webinars or any of our sorts of meetings with a thought for the day. And my thought for today is this one: when a recession does materialise, many experts agree ready cash is the oxygen that every small business owner requires to survive. And this quote, referring to cash as the oxygen of the business needing to have oxygen to survive, is a theme that we've heard quite a lot over the past couple of weeks, about getting your oxygen mask on first so that we can then help everybody else around us. And while of course cash flow can be really difficult in these times, today I want to share with you some really practical things that you can do to preserve that cash flow. So I'm just going to set up the agenda for our meeting. It's going to run to about 60 minutes. We've got a good 15 minutes at the end to do Q&As. So if you've got something that you want to deep dive into, could you pop those up into the Q&A on the webinar, and Vicky will moderate that as we go and just help you out if there's something she can answer as we're talking. But we'll try and save up our questions for the end so that we can make sure that everything that's worrying you right now, we get answered in time for us to go off and enjoy our weekends without these sort of niggling thoughts in our minds. So the agenda is going to run like this. So we're going to talk about mindset. I always start my webinars and my meetings talking about mindset, and that might seem like a slightly surprising thing. Accountants aren't known for talking about mindset particularly, but I think it's incredibly important that we get our heads in the right place before we go and make decisions in our business. So we're going to talk about mindset first, then we're going to talk about debtor systems that we can use whilst we're working from home. So it's a little bit different now that we're outside of the office, and so we may want to just tweak some of our systems that we've got in place about how to get our debtors situation under control. Our third thing is going to be lessons that we can take from this period into the future. And there's going to be some really great learnings that are going to come out of what's happening right now, some streamlining that's going on, and some ways of improving our processes that we can be doing right now that are going to set us into really good stead for the future. We're going to talk about what support's available in the meantime. And then we're going to give you some next steps that you can take away and do some practical stuff right now that's going to help you to move on your cash flow position. And then at the end, we're going to take some questions. So your required mindset in these difficult times, with our thought for the day in mind, that you should never take your eye off the cash flow. Before we talk about the strategies that you can adopt, let's talk about the 3 mindsets that I think you need to have right now. The first one is that you must be empathetic. My second is you need to approach your debtor management with both backbone and heart. And it's okay to sell in these times. So as long as you're solving problems for your customers that they've got right now, then selling is fine. And I think I've had a few conversations over the past couple of weeks where people are either pulling back from sales or saying it doesn't feel right to be selling, or selling feels a bit pushy right now. And we never want to feel pushy about our sales, but it's really worth keeping in mind that selling is really about helping people. And if you can put yourself into the mindset that what you're doing is helping your customers, and as long as you're doing that from a good place, you know, really from an empathetic place, then selling is absolutely fine right now. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Remember the analogy of the oxygen mask. In a time of emergency, you need to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help other people. If your business falls over, then nobody wins. So it's really important that we keep that bit in mind. So our first mindset that I want to talk about is to be empathetic. Of course, it's not as simple as saying, right, oxygen masks on me, the customer must pay, or we're not going to help them. That's not an empathetic place to start from. We've heard some real horror stories of businesses who are stopping credit, ramping up their debt collection, and they're not putting any thought into how their customers are coping. We know this isn't you. You guys on a webinar like this have come here because you're trying to help your customers and you're trying to find ways to do that. So I'm not worried that you're doing these wrong things, but just be aware that there are people out there in the business community who are doing that, and that's what you don't want to be. So before we work out the best way to keep the cash flow going, we need to have a framework. And this framework starts with empathy, which we define as the ability to see things from your customer's perspective and to be prepared to do something about it. And that second part's really important. You know, it's one thing to see what it's like to be in your customer's shoes, but then the second part of that empathy is to say, and how can we help you? So that's where the idea of giving customers options as to how they can pay you comes in. So if you work through these bullet points that I've got here up on the screen for you, and use this as your framework, and also make sure that your team are working through this framework too, you should be able to make sure that empathy comes across for your customers. So you want to ask your customers how they're coping, and that's a really nice opening question. So when you're talking to your customers, if you're going to start your conversation not with, hi, I'm calling from XYZ and I want to know why you haven't paid me, a much more empathetic way to do that is to pick up the phone and go, how are you guys doing? What's it like at your end right now? Tell me about how this is feeling for you. So asking those questions about how you're coping and how the business is going, and then considering the loyalty that they've shown you. So, you know, customers that have been with you and looked after your business over a number of years, you really want to recognize that in your client base and say, you know, I know you guys have been loyal. I really appreciate what you've been doing. And then after you've had those points 1, 2 to 3, that's a nice time to say to your customers, you know, here are some ways that you could pay us. So that might be something like installments, using direct debit, offering to take a card payment, splitting that into 2, something like that, which may just help them to get through this period with you. But it also shows so much goodwill, and that can be really powerful right now. So our next thing to really focus on is about having backbone and heart. So as long as we're being empathetic and giving clients choices, we can talk about how we're going to get paid. A useful mindset here is remembering to have both the backbone and the heart side. So backbone's all about sharing that you're running a business too, and that you need the cash flow. You know, it's that slightly harder part of what's going on. And remembering it's okay to be paid for the value that you've already provided to people. That's absolutely fine. As business owners, we do need that backbone part to make sure that our businesses are going to be sustainable. And then the heart side, which is linking back to your purpose statement. And if you've not done that core values piece in your business, if you don't quite know what that purpose is, it's worth spending a bit of time. This is a nice sort of weekend job, actually, is to just sit down and think about what the purpose of your business is. And to really see if you can get that into a specific phrase that you can share with your customers and with your staff, so that people really know what it is that your purpose is. And then the other heart parts are considering all the different options that you could offer for payment and being flexible and considerate in your approach. So tailoring what your approach is to the customer that you're talking to. So trying to get that juggle right, the backbone along with the heart, means that you're looking after the sustainability of your business in both those ways of making sure that there's going to be enough cash for you to keep going, but also that your customers feel really loved right now. And it's important that they feel like you're putting your hands around them a little bit and saying, you know, I'm here, I'm in the same situation as you, we're being empathetic. So that's the backbone and the heart section. And then the third mindset that I want to share, and this is especially useful if you're a service provider, it's okay to sell. So long as your product or service is solving a problem for your customers, and so long as you're going to be paid for the work that you do, then selling is fine. We use the spin cycle. You might have seen this mindset that I've used. I used it in the business continuity planning webinar that we've been doing the last couple of weeks. And we use it with clients quite a lot. It's a really useful tool, and it really comes from a sales strategy, but it's applicable to lots of different places. So this spin cycle is all about the sort of line of questions that we can use when we're selling. We start the spin cycle up at the situation part. So I'll just show you up here, understanding the situation as it stands now, and then we move around it into problems, impact, and needs. So on this one, I'm going to give you an example of how we could use the spin cycle. And just for a little bit of fun, we're going to say that we're talking about a hairdresser. So in a hairdresser situation, this might be what these questions would look like. So you might say, so this would be a hairdresser picking up the phone and talking to one of their customers, and they would start with, how are you coping with being at home right now? Are you spending a lot of time on FaceTime or Zoom, perhaps with calls with your video on? So you're just opening up, what's your situation right now? Then when we come into this problem section, it would be, so how do you feel that every day most probably is starting to feel a bit like a bad hair day? Are you worrying about how your appearance is affecting how that's going? So that's what are the problems that you're dealing with. Then we come around this cycle into impact. So an impact question in this situation would be, how do you think you're going to be feeling in a month from now? And as we get round to the needs part, next step questions. I know we can't be certain when this is all going to be over, when the lockdown's going to be opened up, but how about we book you in for a full head of highlights and a blow dry in 3 weeks' time? So you can see how that spin cycle comes all the way round and opens us up into having a conversation about sales. this is just a bit of fun. I know that probably the people on the call aren't hairdressers, but you can see how it can be used in different areas. And just to show that it's absolutely fine to sell, because what you're doing is listening to what your customers' problems are and giving them a solution that they need. So as long as you link your offering as a way of solving a current problem for your customers, you're doing absolutely fine. So now we've talked about the 3 mindsets that you need to have, we can talk more specifically about your debtors system in these times. Firstly, I'm going to talk about best practice. Then I'm going to share a guide and some scripts, and we're going to give these out for free to you guys. You had them in your email about remembering to come onto the webinar today, but we'll also share that link again after the webinar, so you've got access to it. And then I'm going to talk some more about credit control processes. Essentially, nothing should change when you're talking about debt collection. It's just that you need to really dial up your empathy. By engaging more with your customers around their particular circumstances, you can tweak the processes that you've got just for the customers who are going to struggle. Remember, not all of your customers are at great risk right now. So COVID-19 doesn't give them an excuse not to pay you if it's not affecting their business. And we do know of businesses who are actually really thriving through this period because, you know, if you're providing solutions for people working from home, if you're running Zoom, for example, you really don't need any time to pay your bills because you've done really well from what's happening right now. So you need to remember that in your business, you've already done the work or you've supplied the product. And you're running a business and you do need to be paid. I'm hoping that everybody on the call's using paperless systems, but if not, this is going to need to be your top priority just now, or your customers simply won't know how much to pay. Very many of you will be working from home, working remotely. So if you were sending out invoices, for example, on bits of paper, even doing that from home might be quite tricky. You know, you might not have the right printers, you might not have your letterheads. So switching up to finding a paperless system is going to be great. Xero, which is what we use with all of our clients, is really geared up for sending email invoices and statements. So that's what you should be really using here. Best practice credit control is that you've got great guidance notes for your team members responsible for your credit control and debt collection. So that's things like flowcharts or scripts, templates for them to use. And we'll show you some of these shortly as we've put together a package on this for you. So you don't have to go and write these from scratch. We've got them ready to go. Many problems with debtors come about because we've not put great systems in place around giving credit in the first place. So we're going to talk about credit checks and outsourcing shortly. So we've got some guides and scripts. Here's a snippet of the guide and the credit control script we've put together. And we're really happy to share this with you at no cost off the back of the seminar. Really, our job is to try and make sure that all of the businesses in our business community and our ecosystem are doing everything that they can. And if we can help you by giving you some scripts, then we're really happy to do that. I'm just going to jump out of our PowerPoint for a second and show you what those are going to look like. So if you haven't looked at these already, here's the script that we've put together. And for example, it's got just as a nice start, hi, it's so-and-so from this company. I'm calling to see how you, your team and your family are doing while we're all working through the situation. So you can see that we start off with positioning ourselves in that empathy role right at the beginning. And then it tells you how to carry on and what to do if somebody says yes or no. And these scripts are a couple of pages long, so it's not masses here, but will be really a smart thing for you to share with your team, so that if you're the business owner and you're trying to do all of your own debt collection, you've probably found that that's quite an onerous task. And if you can share that out with your team, that would be a really great thing to do. And alongside that, we've got this credit management guide. So this is alongside this webinar, which we're recording, so we'll have this available for you guys to have another listen through to later. But we've also got what your credit management strategy should focus on, some stuff about terms of trade, and this is quite a nice long guide, so something for you to read over the weekend, maybe with a beer in hand, so that you can put in place some strategies. So we'll make sure that you've got that already for when you're back at the office on Monday. So back onto our PowerPoint here. Let me just whiz over onto credit control services. So it's really important to remember that credit control is not just about following up your debtors. There's a lot more to it than that. It's a complete system from when you take a customer on, from your onboarding point, right through until when they pay you. So as we mentioned previously, we recommend that you outsource your credit management. This isn't really something that your business owner should be doing. And we not only believe that this is best practice, but it also frees up your time as well. And that could be somebody within your team, or it could be somebody outside of your team. So it's essential you build a relationship with your chosen provider so they can understand your core values, your style of communication, and the sort of language that you use. And having said that outsourcing is best practice, this is not an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. So, and what I mean by that is that in the current climate, you can't suddenly outsource all of your credit management for customers who are going to really struggle in these difficult times, as this is just going to cause you brand damage for you and your credit controller. And not to mention, it could waste you quite a lot of time. I don't think there's anything worse than being used to having one contact who's reminding you about your invoices, and then suddenly you get a heavy-handed approach when things are really tough. And I don't think that would be a good thing for your business brand to do. So what we're talking about is having a nice structured process for getting somebody else to help you. So what we've developed with that content that we've just showed you will help you to be able to manage that credit control process. Our cash flow management coaching service is a great way to drill down even further and make sure you've got the best systems in place to free up your cash flow. And if you don't currently have one of those, we can recommend credit managers who'll be able to help you in the future. And on the slide here, you can see I'm suggesting Nikki Kinton, and she runs a company called Confident Cash Flow, and she's a very professional credit controller. And she can really help you with getting terms and conditions set up and then doing the day-to-day bit of cash flow management. So if you're looking for somebody that you can outsource this to who wouldn't be a heavy-handed, scary type, but would make sure that you got paid on time, I can really recommend Nikki, and we'll make sure you've got contact details for her in our wrap-up slides that we send over to you. So here's who we recommend you contact for credit checks for new customers. And if you're not doing this already, I can really recommend it as part of your onboarding for new clients. You don't want to inherit other firms' non-paying customers, even in this current climate. So you may find that people are jumping ship, especially if you're in a service type of business, that you get new customers at the door because you've been really great at communicating during this period. Maybe you've been really vocal on LinkedIn and you're finding you've got lots of new customers at your door. What you don't want to do is find out that those customers are coming to you because they've not paid their last supplier. So credit checking should be a standard part of your onboarding process, and that's why we include it in our cash flow management service. These are Equifax, Endol, Credit Safe, all people that you can buy credits for doing that kind of credit checking with. So you go on, you buy a credit from them, you go into their system, and you can put in the name of your potential customer and find out what that credit score is. And that's going to let you know how you should deal with them. So should you be asking for money up front? Is it okay to give them some kind of credit limit? And you really want to be doing that with some good data behind you. So we've talked about best practice with your debtors and how to avoid working for people who can't pay you. Now it's time to talk about what you need to do going forward from here to maximise your own cash flow. Some of these concepts that we're going to talk about you may have heard before if you've come to our business continuity planning webinar, or if you've listened to that again. And if this is you, then listen for the distinctions and make some notes about the actions you need to take, as we'll be asking you for those actions in your feedback at the end. And there are a few tweaks between the way that we've used some of these terminologies and some of these great models that we've got, and we've used them slightly different in this webinar than we did in the business continuity planning webinar. So what we've got is the cash conversion cycle, your business 101 cycle. We've got 7 causes of poor cash flow, how to get runs on the board quickly, how to get some assistance from your bank, and then our final set of slides is government support and tax considerations, which we've been updating pretty much every day as new stuff comes out from the government. And so we're just going to do a really quick run through what those look like. And if you were on our Q&A for furloughing first thing today, so at 10 o'clock, on every Friday at 10 o'clock, Caroline Varlan and I run another webinar about the furlough situation. So if you're looking for a bit more of a deep dive on furlough, I can recommend going back and watching that, and we've got links to that on our social media, so you can jump on that, and we'll be running that again on Friday next week after the furlough portal's been open. So I'm expecting lots of new questions about how that system for getting money back into your business is going to work, and we'll know a lot more about that by the end of next week. One of the most important ways to improve your business is to shorten your cash conversion cycle. In other words, you need to get your cash in quicker. So let's take a look at a real example using this cash conversion cycle. So here we've got a project management company. So if we start here, the company contracts services from a supplier to deliver a project to their end customer. And on average, they must pay their suppliers 45 days after the start of delivery on the project. So that's where we are here, which is where the cash goes out of the business. The contract for the end customer states that payment is made when all of the deliverables are completed. So when the project's finished, credit terms are provided to customers, but a number of customers are not observing those credit terms, which happens quite a lot in small businesses. On average, it's taking 60 days for customers to pay. And you can see that's this part up here, average receivables is 60 days. So now we can calculate a cash conversion cycle, which is the 60 days average project length here, plus the 60 days to get paid by customers, less the 45 days credit provided by the suppliers over here, equals 75 days to convert inputs into cash. In difficult times such as this, we need to ensure that you guys have got a plan in place to shorten this cash conversion cycle. And this is a process we would recommend you do as part of your business continuity plan. Using the numbers from your most recent management accounts, you can work out the above numbers for how long your average project length and how long your average receivables are. And from there, we can calculate your cash conversion cycle. So from that point on, we then discuss with clients how we can work together and shorten up that cash cycle to free up more cash. And as an example of how we might do that, what we would look at is finding a way to shorten up the length of the project, to also find a way to have discussions with our end customer to say, okay, so in the past you're paying us late outside of your terms, so how can we make sure you pay on time? And also to talk about our suppliers and see if we can shorten down the time it's taken for them to finish up their project, and then how long we can wait before we need to pay them. So take an example in your own business. Let's say your debtors are £50,000 right now and your turnover is 500,000 per year. Then if we could reduce down that cycle just by 10 days, that would make £13,700 more available into your bank account, which is it's a considerable sum of money. And that's cash that right now we're seeing clients could really do with. So just finding a way to shorten that cycle by 10 days is worth quite a considerable amount of money. So we really recommend you incorporate a review of your cash conversion cycle as part of your business continuity plan, or doing a forecast, so you can free up as much cash flow as possible. You can see this isn't about making more money, it's about getting more cash into the business, and understanding the difference between those two things is really important. So you might have seen this Business 101 cycle if you're on the business continuity webinar last week or the week before, but it's really important you just listen out for the distinctions I'm going to make, and just make some notes about how that applies directly in your business while we're going through this. So here's another area of focus to improve your cash flow, and the Business 101 cycle, especially in difficult times, is a really useful one to look at. As we often tell people, there's a massive difference between profit and cash. So profit is what you're going to pay tax on, and cash is the oxygen that your business needs to survive. Profitable businesses can and do go out of business because they run out of cash. A great contact that I've got likes to say that you can only run out of cash once in your business. And he's dead right. Once the cash goes, then your business is dead. So it's really important that we keep this focus on cash, but we also make sure that the business continues to be profitable. What's so important here is that, as well as improving your cash conversion cycle, you make plans to maximize your profit and at the same time finance your business correctly. So let's just walk through this Business 101 cycle. If we start at the top, as an owner, you introduce cash into the business to buy your assets. So this is up here. You may also borrow cash to purchase assets. So, you know, if you're buying a big piece of machinery, you might get that on finance. Those assets are used to generate a profit. And how you increase profit is to improve your revenue or your sales, which could be very difficult in these challenging times for some businesses, but for others, it's still absolutely possible. You can also increase your margin or your efficiency, or you can trim your overheads. So that's this section down here. So now is a very good time to be looking closely at potential new revenue lines, new potential customers perhaps, or pivoting your sales strategy. So what you can do to avoid do to avoid losing existing customers can also be a really good way of increasing your profitability here. And that might be as simple as reaching out to your existing customers and making sure that they're feeling well looked after. At the same time, you ought to be looking at how you can improve your margins via efficiency gains, better purchasing, reduction in errors if you're making things, and wastage, or simply discontinuing with products or services that have got a poor margin. Once you've derived your profit, you need to turn that into cash. Profitable businesses can and do go broke at times like this, and you need to be looking at how you can maximize your cash flow using strategies to get paid quicker, reduce your stock or your work in progress, or by negotiating better terms with your suppliers. Now is not the time to be slow or lenient on debt collection. We need this money to keep spinning around in the economy, not just for our own businesses, but actually for the good of the whole business ecosystem that we're part of. Likewise, you need to be very careful about reordering stock. Can you operate with less stock, or are there items that are likely to be in short supply? Other areas to help improve your cash flow are through better terms with your financiers. So can you go on to interest only, for example, on some of your loans? And I'm going to cover a little bit more on finance shortly. Likewise, there are many tax concessions available right now too, so you'll want to make sure you've got access to them. And again, I'll go through those in more detail. So here are the 7 causes of poor cash flow. Part of our cash flow management coaching service that we offer involves a full review of each of these 7 causes of poor cash flow so that together we can make a plan to free up as much cash as possible. We've got extensive resources we can share with you throughout this process so that you can implement the ideas with real power. But the top 7 causes are having a bad accounts receivable process. So that's about how you get money into the business from your customers. An accounts payable process that's not streamlined, so that's paying either too quickly or paying incorrectly. And sometimes when we look into our clients' business processes, when we first take them on, we'll find things that create issues in accounts payable, like not having a good way of recognizing when you've got duplicate invoices from a customer and then from a supplier, and then paying them twice. And that sort of thing is something that we can eliminate really fast. Having the wrong sort of inventory or WIP processes, so that's holding on to too much stock, or if you're a supplier of services, that's having projects that just go on for too long and you're not able to charge until you finish your project, and that can wrap up cash in your WIP, in your work in progress, which can really slow down your cash flow. You might have an inappropriate debt or capital structure, that's borrowing from things that are too expensive, or not having enough borrowing in the business to allow you to grow. Your overheads might be too high. Really simple. You might be paying too much for rent. You might have some subscriptions that have been hanging around in your business for a long time that nobody's using. So a really smart way to really cut your costs quickly is to go through who are we paying for that we don't use anymore. You know, maybe software subscriptions that you're not using. Your gross profit margin might be too low. If you're buying things in and selling them out, and you haven't had a look at what those margins are recently, you might have found that your supply of those things that you sell on has got more expensive over time, but you've not changed your prices, and that's going to have decreased your margin. And it's a really quick and easy way to have a look into seeing what's going on with your gross profit margin and making sure that's still in the right place. And your sales might just be too low. You might not be talking to enough customers. You might not have a big enough pipeline. So all of those 7 areas of causes of poor cash flow are things that we would help a customer to have a look at in more depth. So how do we pull all of this together in a meaningful way in this current climate and into the future? So here are some ways to get runs on the board really quickly. Here are things that you could take away today and by Monday have moving in your business. So one thing you could do is you could outsource your credit management, and that would be to somebody like Nikki Kinton, or to us if that's something that you would like some help with. you should revise your terms of trade and look at your proposals. So making sure that those terms of trade are correct for the current situation. You know, you're not giving people too long to pay, or you're not being clear enough with your customers as to what your expectations about payment are. You can look at your billing process. Are you doing sort of ad hoc billing when you remember to send out your invoices, or do you have a process around that to make sure that everybody that you're doing work for is paying you at the right point? Are you automating it? So rather than having to write every single invoice at the end of each month, if you're on a monthly sort of billing process, something like using Xero's automated invoicing, recurring invoices that will automatically go out to customers rather than you having to remember to send them. These things can really help your cash flow. And then having some management controls and procedures in place. So is it all a bit ad hoc right now? Do you need to write some procedure around what you're doing? I think that's probably going to cover all of those things that you need to remember. One of the things I want to make sure that you look at when you're looking at your billing process is to get customers, whenever you can, picking out those customers that tend to be slow and working with them first. So it's really worth triaging your customer base if that's possible, and saying, okay, so there's a whole bunch of customers here who always pay me on time. I really don't need to do anything different with them, but here's another bunch of customers who are lagging behind. How about I look into putting them into a direct debit process? So saying to them, from now on, you've got to pay us by direct debit, and putting them in through something like Go Cardless, which is a really quick and easy system. Or alternatively, signing up for a product like Stripe, which allows you to take card payments. And that would really quickly allow you to get around that objection that we sometimes hear in our business, where people say, I can't pay you right now, but I would if I could pay you on a credit card. Well, don't let that be an objection in your business. You can have a Stripe account set up within a couple of days. And if you had that running in the background, you'd always be able to take a card payment. Lovely thing with something like Stripe is that there are no monthly fees for it. So if you don't use it, you're not paying for it. So I'd really advise you to have a little look at how that might be able to help you. So what's available from your business? Bank assistance. Some of you may have had a word already with your bank, but one of the highest overheads that you're probably going to have in a business is going to be your interest costs to financiers if you're borrowing. If you add the principal reductions required on loans as well, this can be a really massive drain on the business right now. Here's a list of ways that the bank or your other financiers could be able to help you. So you could ask to increase your temporary overdraft facilities, and I know many of our customers have already done that, had that conversation. Banks have been writing out to people recently saying that they've done that automatically for them, or at least they've taken away the interest on overdraft facilities. So that's definitely worth looking at. You could review and extend your trade credit, so that would be where you have credit with your suppliers. And you could ask for that to either your credit limit to be raised, or for the time that you need to pay to be extended, so that you can pay maybe over 60 days rather than over 30. You could look for asset finance funding. So that's where you've got an asset in the business, and you could either have that financed, or if you're looking to buy an asset, rather than paying for it outright, you could get funding to do that. There are loan repayment holidays available, and where clients have had conversations with their bank, they've been nicely surprised at how easy some of these conversations have been. So if you've got a loan or a credit card in the business, it would definitely be worth having conversations about deferring repayments, or asking for interest-only terms, or even asking for an interest-free period and then the interest coming back in at a later date. Another option is to extend your term on lending. So for example, let's say you've borrowed some money over 2 years. It's been maybe a growth loan from somebody like Funding Circle, Just Cashflow, these kind of lenders. It might be worth going back to those lenders and saying, could I extend that out to a 5-year term? It doesn't make the amount of money you pay go down. In fact, you're going to pay a bit more on interest over that way, but because it's spread out over such a long period, the monthly payments would be smaller, and that could really help you with cash flow right now. You could look for short-term or hardship loans, and we'll talk about CBILS a little bit more in a second. CBILS is the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. I forget that we're using this terminology every day in our practice, but lots of businesses aren't hearing these words every single day, so I must remember not to use accounting jargon when I'm talking to you guys, because I know it's frustrating. So yeah, so these kind of loans are available, and we can talk about that in a second. On a personal note, asking for a short-term mortgage holiday has been very successful for lots of my clients. They're being offered straight off the bat 3 months without any mortgage payments. So you should definitely be looking into that if you haven't done already. And then business credit card options, you know, looking at switching to interest-free offers, using those things that, you know, that junk mail that sometimes comes through and you think, I really don't need a business credit card right now. Maybe it's time to have another look at those and see if switching from one card that's got interest on it to an interest-free period might help you with cash flow right now. So part of your cash flow improvement or business continuity plan should be a discussion with your bank or your financiers about how they can help you. And as an independent advisor, we can also talk to you first about the best options for you to go to the bank with if you want a little bit more guidance on that. So government support and tax considerations. Now, this was updated this morning. I think I last updated this one, so I'm hoping it's right up to date now. You know, we're having announcements every single day from the Chancellor, so if you're watching this webinar again later, I'd advise you to go back onto our webpage or into our coronavirus Gmail, Google Drive, that we've got all of these kind of updates in, just to make sure you're getting the most up-to-date information, because it does keep on changing. But as it stands at the moment, here are a few of the things that the government is supporting us with. So you can defer VAT and payments on account for your personal income tax until the for VAT until the 31st of March 2021, and for your personal tax you can defer until the 31st of January 2021. It's worth considering those if cash flow is short. Don't forget that is a deferral. It's not going to take away the liability. So you will still have to make those payments at some point. And I would advise that if you do decide to defer those, pop something into your diary to remind yourself how much that is that you're going to have to pay, and think about setting up within a business savings account a monthly payment into there to help you to build up. If your VAT, for example, is a large chunk of cash that you need to find, you definitely don't want to get to the 31st of March and think, crikey, I've got to pay the VAT that was due from last year's quarter plus the VAT that's due from this current quarter where we're still trading. That could be a really bad crunch point. So make sure you're planning in if you do decide to defer. There was an increase in universal credit that was announced for the 6th of April for this current tax year that we're now in. So if you fall between the posts on self-employment and employment, there are people where none of the other schemes are going to help them out, then universal credit is there for you. You can apply for that on the government website. And it's slightly higher than it was a couple of weeks ago. So it's worth having a look at that. When we're talking about universal credit, I do suggest to people that they go to the Entitled To website, which is one of the benefit checker type of websites. There are a number of them. You can put in your details there and it will tell you how much credit, universal credit, you would be able to claim. And it would be worth doing that before going onto the government website, which is slightly more in depth and it takes a little bit longer to do, because if you're only going to get a very tiny bit of universal credit, you might choose not to go in and actually do that claim. The £10,000 or £25,000 grants based on small business rates relief, these are getting out to people already. In fact, I had a text just a second ago from one of our clients saying her £10,000 has turned up in her bank account. Very excited. So I know that they haven't all come through yet. Some of our local councils are being a little slower than others. But if you haven't applied for that already, you need to go onto your local authority, who would normally raise your small business rates relief bill, your rate bill, and also give you your small business rates relief. It's from there that you'll be able to apply for that grant. I know when they were first announced, we were told that there wasn't going to be an application process. Well, of course, the local authority needs to know where to send the money to. So it's a very light touch sort of application. It just asks you to confirm that you are the business owner and that you do get business rates relief, and you need to tell them what bank account you want that money sent to, but it should only take about 5 minutes. So if you've not done that already, you should go ahead and get that done. There have been some changes to statutory sick pay to help those people that are ill with COVID-19, and so you get sick pay from day 1 rather than from day 4, which was the old sick pay regime, and those should be quite easy to claim. If you're having any trouble with statutory sick pay, you should be talking to the person that's running your payroll to make sure that you're getting that correctly dealt with. Having said that, some people are choosing to use furlough above statutory sick pay because the furlough rules are more generous. So it's 80% of your normal pay. So it may be that you need to have a discussion with your advisor. If we're running your pay for you, we can help you with that, just to make sure that you're getting the best deal on sick pay versus furlough. There's the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, which is the CBILS scheme that you will probably have heard about in the press. This is coming out through the high street banks, and now a number of other lenders have joined that scheme over the past few days. So if you have tried already through your bank and you've been unsuccessful, and we know that that's the majority of applicants, so only 1 in 4 applicants have managed to get a CBILS loan approved. If that's happened to you right early on in the process, it may be worth talking to some of the newer lenders that have joined to see if they may be able to help you. The CBILS rules have been changed a number of times, and it's now slightly easier for people to get through the scheme, but it still seems that that's quite a sticky situation. We're not really getting all of the loans that we would hope for. And then lastly on there, we've got the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme for furloughed workers. So this is the thing that you may have heard quite a lot about. Furlough is quite a new term. We used to not use this in the UK, but the furlough scheme allows you to put people off onto, I'm so sorry, those are my dogs in the background, which you may be able to hear because somebody's decided to deliver to our door. So hopefully you can still hear me over the top of that. So the furlough scheme, we're going to move on to this slide, and I'll just talk you through very quickly what the headlines are for furlough. So furlough is instead of putting people onto redundancy. So it has to be that there isn't any work for these people, and you can only furlough somebody if they're not going to do any work. So you can't have somebody part furloughed. They can't go off on a half time, for example. They've got to be completely not working. You can pay them 80% of their pay, up to £2,500 a month, I'm going to just have to ask you if I can pop you over to Vicky just to talk you through the rest of this slide. Just one moment. Vicky, are you able to unmute yourself?
Not sure.
I can hear you. That's absolutely fine.
Oh, okay.
Would you mind just talking through just for 2 seconds, and I will be back with you.
Yeah. Okay. So 80% of pay up to £2,500 per month. As an employer, you can make up the 20% that's missing, but you don't have to. The pay is based on their usual salary or the average if variable hours. They can have a second job outside of your business, so they are allowed to go and find something else or volunteer. There's no rules that say they can't work elsewhere unless it's within the contract that you have with them.
Vicky, I can pick up from there.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a minimum 3-week period for furloughing. So you have to furlough people for a full 3 weeks at a time. So that means you can't just drop people in and out on an ad hoc basis. They must be off that full 3 weeks, but you can bring them back after that. So what you can do is have people off for 3 weeks, then have them back in the office for a week, and then they can go off on furlough again afterwards. And there are some businesses where we're seeing this happening, actually, especially around accounting and finance, because what we're seeing people are doing is they're taking people off work for 3 weeks, and then for the last week of the month, they're getting their bookkeepers back in, getting all of their accounts and their payroll run, and then they're coming back onto furlough for the next 3 weeks. So that's definitely something that's available to you. The furlough pay gets repaid from HMRC. There's a portal from which to claim that, and that portal is going live on Monday. So we haven't seen anything about it other than being told that it will be there. So from Monday, you should be able to use your Government Gateway login to go in and claim that furlough pay back from HMRC. Or alternatively, if you're one of our clients and we're running your payroll for you, we'll be doing that initial claim for the furlough pay to come back to you. And the guidance at the moment is saying that you should expect it normally to take between 4 and 6 working days for the money to come back from when you put in your claim, but the first one will be paid on the 30th of April. So that means if you put in your claim on the 20th, and that's fingers crossed that the portal stays working and it doesn't collapse under demand, that then if that goes in on the 20th, you'll get your money on the 30th of April in time to pay your payroll on the last day of the month. So that's how the furlough scheme is going to work. And if you've got more in-depth questions around furlough, join us on our Q&A on a Friday morning, or rewatch the Q&A that we did this morning, which should be up live, might be up today, might be up on Monday morning, but we answer lots of questions around furlough in there. So we've set out for you the mindsets you need to have in these difficult times, that you need to be empathetic, that you need to have backbone and heart around debt collecting. And we've talked about how to avoid shying away from selling. We've shared some best practice about credit control and debtor collection, and we've showed you a guide and the scripts that you can use. We've covered how to free up as much cash flow as possible by looking closely at your cash flow conversion cycle and the Business 101 model. And we've looked at the 7 causes of poor cash flow and how you can get runs on the board quickly to improve cash flow, including what support is available from the bank. We've shared in general terms what support is available from the government and from other sources. Now it's essential that you decide what you're going to do. So as we said before, clearly doing nothing is not an option. Now's the time to put your oxygen mask on yourself and make a plan to get through this crisis, even if that plan involves closing your business or mothballing your business. You're going to be better off to make that decision sooner rather than later to preserve what cash flow you can. Part of that planning is to surround yourself with experts, and we're here to help you, and we've already mentioned people like Nikki Kinton. And it's really important that the people that are around you are the ones that that really understand the field that they're in. So we hear lots of people saying, oh, my friend suggested that I do this, or I've heard on the grapevine that this is possible. And I always say, go to the experts, and also go to the Gov UK website if you're looking for the absolute truth about what you can and can't do. Remember to focus on those things that you can do. So with this in mind, we've developed this guide to credit control and some detailed scripts for debtor management that you can have at absolutely no cost from us. What we also want to share now is how we can help you even more. So then we're going to ask you to share in your feedback what actions you're going to take. So as we said before, we can and we really do want to help you in these challenging times. And that's why we're offering some free support that you can have straight away. And with all of our clients, our recommended strategy is to complete a business continuity plan. Many of you are well on your way with this work with us, and we've been receiving some really fantastic feedback from the webinars that we have been running about how helpful this process is. And on the back of that business continuity planning webinar, we have shared out the template plan and the guide on how to do that yourself. So there's definitely a free, a no cost option for you guys if that's going to be what suits your position best. If you haven't done your business continuity plan, now's the time to do it. And it's going to form a really great foundation from which to build your cash flow improvement strategy. So we've got 2 options that we recommend to complete your plan. So if you're wanting to meet with us online, we can do that either together as a single session of about 4 hours, or with 2 shorter online sessions if that's better for your sort of where your mind is right now. And we find sometimes trying to concentrate for 4 hours is pretty intense, so 2 shorter online sessions works for lots of our clients. The advantage of this approach is that we're going to be able to make sure you get all of your entitlements to support that are available right now. And we also believe that when we combine your expertise with our expertise, we get a really great plan out of it. And what we've done over for this specific period is we've reduced our fee down to 50% of what our normal rates are, so that we can really support as many people as possible. So that first option, the online business continuity planning session, we normally charge our planning sessions out at £895, and for this period we've brought that down to half of that at £447. The second option we've got is that we share our free business continuity plan template and the guide with you, so you can complete the first draft of the plan on your own. And then we'll have an online meeting with you, something like 60 to 90 minutes, and finalize that plan alongside you. This option really suits people who feel comfortable preparing plans, and they're not inundated with other things to do right now. So, you know, maybe if your work's really quietened down a lot and you'd like to get your teeth stuck into doing some planning yourself, we can then get on a call with you afterwards and we can really flesh that plan out so you get the best of both worlds. The risk with that approach is that with everything else going on right now, you just might not get around to doing your plan at all. So again, we've taken our fees down to 50% of our normal charges to make sure that it's really something that anybody's going to be able to get their hands on. For those of you who've already done your business continuity plan, we recommend you work with us to do the next step, which is completing your cash flow forecast. Many of you are using these forecasts as a basis to support finance applications to the bank. And if you're applying for CBILS, you're going to need a cash flow forecast. Of course, you should be acting like the bank too, in that you've advanced money yourself into your business. So you need to be sure that you're going to get repaid just like the bank would do. Preparing a cash flow forecast together allows us to share with you many ideas on how we can improve your cash flow in these challenging times. And a combination of finance, government, tax assistance and cash flow improvement tactics are all needed here, and we can help you to get those in together. Your cash flow forecast is the step that identifies where the improvements can be made, and having a cash flow management initial coaching session will help us to show you how to implement your ideas from the forecast. So you consider it an opportunity for us to show you the full extent of what's possible in your business. We're really confident that once you see the value and the improvement in your cash flow, you'll want to continue working alongside us with ongoing cash flow management coaching, which is what we do with a number of clients. We meet on a quarterly basis to do that. But at this stage, we're not asking you to commit to anything like that, just to commit to having one session to see if that's going to work for you. And we really appreciate it might be difficult to commit to spending money right now. That's why we've made the cost of all of these options half of our normal rates. We expect that through a combination of business continuity planning, forecasting and cash flow management coaching, the cash flow benefits will be so much greater than what our fees are. And more importantly, it's about helping you as quickly as possible get this cash flow working in your business. So it's time for some questions. So you can put those up to us via the chat panel in the Q&As, and I think Vicky might have some questions that she's got to share with me. Vicky, can I just pass over to you? Have you got some questions to ask?
There haven't been any questions come through the Q&A. We've had a few specific ones about the furlough and claiming back. But so we will do it. If we run your payroll for you, we will be doing it for you. Certainly the first month, and we're going to see how it goes and how long it takes as to whether there will be a charge after that. But we will be certainly running it this first time round.
So shall I just fill in a little bit more on that, Vicky? So the agreement, and you know, I've had a few sleepless nights about how to deal with the furlough situation in our practice for our clients. So what we've decided in the practice is that we are going to for those clients that we run payrolls for, we will do the furlough refund process completely this month with no cost to our clients. And we've done that because we think it's really important we get this money back to you, and we really want to make sure that you know how much we want to support you on it. And also, we have no idea how long it's going to take. It's a brand new system. We don't know how it's going to work. And what we don't want to do is put that extra stress onto you as our clients with everything else that you've got going on right now, with you having to try and navigate HMRC. We are used to dealing with HMRC. We know the little quirks that they have built into their systems. We know what can go wrong. And we're pretty good at sort of dealing with that kind of stress and working out processes internally. So what we're saying we're going to do is do that for our clients who we already run payroll for free of charge. For clients who run their own payroll, what we're going to do is write a really nice sort of FAQ type of document for you with a process on it to say, right, this is how claiming for furlough works. Here are all the steps that you need to take, so that you guys can take it away and do that yourself. The in-between, so the sort of the third option is that if you run your own payroll, but you don't feel confident enough to do that furlough part, you can ask us to do that for you and we'll charge it at cost. We don't want to be making profit out of this. I mean, it's really important to me that at no point do you think we're profiteering off the situation, but also that it's going to take us time that we haven't banked into our planning within the practice. So if you do want us to do that for you, absolutely, we will jump on and help you, but there will be a cost-based charge for it, because it's going to take up time that we would otherwise be spending with other clients. And then going forward into May, once we've seen what this portal looks like and how long it's taking us, we're going to be in contact with you guys to say either, yeah, absolutely, we can just roll this up into our payroll service to you guys, or alternatively, it's a massive job, it's taking us hours and hours, and the cost for us to do that at absolute cost base is X. Do you want us to continue to do that on your behalf? And that seems like the fairest way that we can deal with it. I mean, we're all in a bit of an unknown here, but just for the moment, for April, know that if we run your payroll for you, we'll also be covering all of that on your behalf as well. Vicky, have you got another one to ask?
Yeah, we've just had a question. Can we do it ourselves if we want to from first month, especially if there may be a charge in future months?
Yeah, absolutely, that's fine. So if you want to, if you'd like to go in and get your hands on this and to control that process, that is absolutely fine. But please, will you just drop us a note to say that's what you're doing? So to whoever normally runs your payroll, if you just drop a quick email to say, I'm going to deal with this myself, that's absolutely fine. You can pick that up and run with it yourself. That's not going to be a problem. And I do foresee that it's actually going to be quite a straightforward system. I don't think it's going to be too difficult to navigate, because HMRC have particularly said they want to make it a self-service system. They cannot help us. They don't have enough capacity for hundreds of businesses to be calling them to say, I can't log in, I can't work out what this question means. So I'm really hoping that they've managed to build something that's very user-friendly, which may mean that we can very happily continue to help clients without having to charge, or with a very minimal charge. But yes, if you want to do it yourself, go ahead, not a problem. Vicky, I've got a couple of other questions here if you don't have any.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So so one of the questions I've had is, I've lost nearly 75% of my income and my business just isn't operating at all right now. What can I realistically do about my cash flow? And it's really important to establish as best we can together, but what your business is going to look like when you can reopen. I think one of the things that I've been saying to people a lot over the last couple of weeks is as much as possible, and it's really hard if your business has come down to, 75% of your income's gone, just wiped off your profit and loss. That's a hard place to be. I know that. But what I'm trying to get clients to do is to just lift their heads up a little bit and try to look further towards the horizon, because this situation is temporary. Yes, we've just had another 3 weeks of lockdown announced, but we're going to get to the end of this year and look back and go, gosh, do you remember what it was like? We're not going to still be in this situation at that point. Yes, we may be heading into a recession. There are things that are going to happen in the economy over the next few months that could be quite tricky, but we're not going to be like this forever. So what we really want to do is to put ourselves into the best position we can possibly be in, that when the doors open again, when we can go out and we can start selling again to people in a really normal situation, that we're ready to go straight out of the blocks. So what I'd like to be saying to a business owner that's really lost a big chunk of income right now is, yes, pull down all of your overheads. There's lots of work that we can do on looking at how to do that right now, but also putting in that plan so that you've got a business continuity plan and a forecast ready to go for when the doors can open again. That puts you in absolutely the best position you could possibly be in to get the cash flowing as quickly as you possibly can when your business starts running. And so, with a business like this one, for example, which is in events, very quickly events just shut right down. Physical events just can't happen right now, but that doesn't mean that your business has to stop completely, because what you could be doing is positioning everything for what's going to happen this time next year. You could be selling slots for the future. You could be doing some online work as well, and making sure that your plan can allow you to get started as soon as you can. So I've also had somebody on the chat saying, I appreciate the solutions you're offering, but I simply cannot pay for these right now. So what do you suggest? So first and foremost, our thoughts are really with our clients like you, who are suffering at the moment, where you just don't have any cash, and we know that that's really uncomfortable. You know, we're facing similar challenges with our business, given the number of clients who are affected. You know, I'm a small business owner just like you, so I have the same sleepless nights that you guys have. We've got lots of different options available to help make our fees affordable for people that are working with us. So, for example, reducing them down to half, you know, so a 50% fee is one of the ways that we can help, but we can also talk about payment plans, spreading things over the year. Lots of our clients, nearly all of our clients now, pay us over 12 months for things, so that's definitely available to you. And so I always say, never let a lack of ability to pay be a barrier to talking to us about the sort of services that we've got. There's always a way to work. You know, we can always tailor something that's going to work for you, and that might come from saying that we'll wait, if we're going to help you with cash flow forecast to get a loan, we'll wait until that loan comes through until your fee gets paid. So there are definitely ways that we can work around that, and we'll use our own goodwill and discretion to make sure that each client is getting what they need. Our clients are our business. You know, we don't have a business without you guys, so we don't want to let you down. And I'd always say, just pick up the phone and talk to us with anything like that you want to just talk through with us. Vicky, have you got anything else in the Q&A?
Yep, something else has come up. Our company started on payroll at the end of Feb, but ran a nil payroll for Feb and March due to having to put money back in the business. Is it correct that we can't furlough due to having a nil payroll on those 2 months?
It probably is, and that depends on what happened before February and March. So if you've had, if you're a variable pay employee, so that would mean, for example, you got paid by the hour, or similarly in a way that goes up and down through November, December, January, and then you just didn't pay in February and March, then for furloughing, what we're able to do is look over the last 12 months. So in fact, for the tax year that finished 5th of April, so we'll look at those 12 months and take an average of what the employee was paid in that period, because they're a variable salary employee, and then you can be furloughed using that average. Another alternative, if you've got variable pay, is to use the same period from the previous year. So for example, if you were being furloughed in March, so you've already stopped working, and for March 2020 you're wanting to be furloughed, what we could also look at is what was paid in March 2019 if you were on the payroll at that point, and use the March 2019 figure if that is higher than the average over the last 12 months. So you're allowed to choose between those two methods to have the higher amount. But it's not quite clear from your question if the payroll in fact wasn't even in existence last year and it just started in February. Vicky, is there anything a bit clearer about that?
It does say our company started on payroll at the end of Feb. So
okay, so there was no payroll in place before that point. Then yes, my understanding is that you cannot be furloughed. The new bit of guidance that was released Thursday night last week was the extension from having to be on the payroll at the 28th of February to having to be on the payroll at the 19th of March. Now that would seem like you might be covered in that bit of guidance, but alongside that, the RTI, which is the bit where the employer tells HMRC that there's some information on their payroll, that RTI needed to have been run on the 19th of March or before as well. That's quite a rare instance. So most employers or payroll runs that we do get run on the last day of the month, 25th of the month, something like that, if it's a monthly salary. So it's very unlikely that if you just had a normal monthly salary and that was paid at the end of March, that you would have had a 19th of March RTI, and that will prevent you from having furlough in future months. I know that's complicated. Sorry, I don't know if there are too many words in those sentences, and if you want to have a deeper discussion about that, I'm really happy to do so. I'm just keeping a little eye on the time. But in circumstances like that, where you feel like you've fallen through the gap, my suggestion is to go onto the Entitled To website and look to see if Universal Credit would fill in instead. So if you've got a brand new business and you've got no money coming in and you're not doing any work, then looking for universal credit might be an option. Also, and I don't quite know the circumstances of this particular person, but if your limited company's only just started a payroll, is that because you were self-employed in the year before? So if you were self-employed in the year that finished the 5th of April 2019, you would still be able to claim the self-employed income support scheme, which is the scheme that looks at what your self-employment profit was over the last 3 years. So let's say you were self-employed all the time previous to this point. You could then apply for the self-employed income support scheme. I said applied, I don't quite mean applied. You could have that applied to you, and I'll explain that in a second. And that might be another way of getting some income in. So with the self-employed income support scheme, HMRC looks at what was filed on your actual self-assessment returns for those periods. It just takes the taxable profit part of your self-employment, averages that out over the 3 years, and then gives you 80% of the 3-month apportionment version of what that would be. So it says, what's your average for the year? Let's take a quarter of that, and then we'll give you 80% of that as a one-off grant direct into your bank account. You don't have to directly apply. HMRC will do the working for you and tell you that you have the ability to claim it, and then you need to go into your Government Gateway login online, and you can do that through your tax dashboard. Now that's not going to happen. The latest guidance I've seen is that that should be coming out to people around mid-May. It's not open yet, so don't panic if you've not heard anything about that yet, because it's not up and running. They've been focusing on furlough first, but that's going to be the next thing, and I would expect to hear a bit more about that in the next week or so. Anything else up there, Vicky?
Nope, that's it.
Wonderful. Okie dokie. So thank you so much for making the time to attend this webinar on a Friday afternoon as well. That's really above and beyond. I'm hoping this is the last thing that most of you are having to do today, and you can shut down your laptops, I don't know, have a glass of wine or a beer and get ready for the weekend. It's been a tough week for lots of people, so I really do appreciate you taking your time. You know, I know your time's really valuable right now, so I appreciate you taking it to spend with us. We hope we've given you plenty of ideas to think about and some clear options for how we can support you. Before we go, I thought I'd just share this parting thought. This is from Stephen Covey. When you show deep empathy towards others, their defensive energy goes right down and their positive energy replaces it. That's when you get more creative in solving problems. So let's make sure we approach our own cash flow challenges with empathy and creativity so that we can get through this difficult time. Thank you. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate your time. We will be sending out follow-ups to you, and we'll make sure that you've got those PDFs for you to use for scripts, and I'd really genuinely, I'd love to hear some feedback on how those scripts have helped you. If there's anything in there that you'd like to share with us, I'd love to hear your wins. You know, if you've managed to have a conversation with a client that you thought wasn't going to pay you and that you've managed to get some money out of, it's really good to share that stuff, especially right now where we're slightly more disconnected from one another. So come and find us on Facebook, come and find us on LinkedIn, drop us a comment, send us an email. All of that stuff is really lovely to hear, and we'll share it out. It's good for the business community to hear each other doing things that are successful and helping themselves within this time, and it helps other people to feel uplifted as well. So share your thoughts with us, and if you can complete your feedback that we're going to send out as a little questionnaire, it's super helpful. It'll help us know that these webinars are useful, or what we can do to get the information to you that you're really after, and also to make sure that in the future we're giving you the sort of webinars that you're after. So I'm going to wrap up now. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks, Vicky, for helping me out. Sorry about the dogs. Of course, that was bound to happen when we're working from home. And we hope to see you really soon. Take care, guys.
Thanks.